stand for acknowledgement of country. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Jury and the national custodians of the land and water connection. Our respect is extended to Aboriginal and
City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity, people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, cultures, backgrounds.
To recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice for us.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Please be seated. Welcome everybody, and welcome to those that are listening on our live stream. Welcome to the Monday, the 23rd of September. I can't believe the year is going so fast. Council meeting. We do have a few apologies. Braden Mann is still on leave. Carol Schofield is an apology, and Carlos Caremba is also an apology tonight. We need to go to items adjourned and lying on the table, and unfortunately the first item is a confidential item, so after we go into confidence, those in the gallery will have to leave for that first item and then come back. So the first recommendation is that we go into confidence because the information to be received, discussed or considered in relation to this item is a matter related to tenders for the provision of goods and services to the council. Moving that way, Councillor Burns, seconding that, Councillor McKenzie. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. If you don't mind leaving gallery and Okay. And item 5.1 is the minutes of the previous meeting of August the 26th. The recommendation is that those minutes be confirmed as true and accurate. Moving that way, Councillor Schiller, seconding that, please. Councillor Mackenzie, any discussion or questions in relation to the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Minutes of the special council meeting on the 16th of September. The recommendation is that those minutes of the 16th of September be confirmed as true and accurate. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Any questions or discussion in relation to those minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have two deputations tonight. The first deputation is from Dr. Heather Holmes-Ross. She'll be presenting to the council via Teams about the Local Government Association President election, which is coming up later on in your agenda today. So we'll just wait for Heather. Heather is the Mayor of Mitcham Council. Mayor Holmes-Ross, can you see us? Try again. Ah, I can see you. Can you see us?
Oh, Lordy, I'm huge. Yes, I can. That's off-putting.
Thank you, Heather. Yes, we can see you on the big screen. And you have 10 minutes to speak with your deputation, and that will include any questions that come from any of the elected members here as well. So I've introduced you to them and said that you're presenting in relation to the Local Government Association President's election.
Thank you, Mayor. Shall I begin now?
You can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you, councillors, for indulging me. I think that I've contacted all of you by email in the last month or so, and I was keen for your feedback before I decided on a position. And I heard from a few councillors and most of the mayors. And so there's information in my nomination form, and I've sent out a supplementary supporting email that gives you most of the details on my position. So I don't really want to delve into that too much tonight. The reason that I've asked to be here is to introduce myself, to give you an idea of who I am and what's important to me, and then by extension you can judge whether you think that I have the attributes that you'd like of someone to be the LGA president. So I'd like to start by talking to you about my journey in becoming a mayor. I come from a background in science and small business, and I was working as a research chemist at Flinders Uni when I met my husband, and he was the executive chef at Qantas, but he decided that he wanted to run his own business. So in this crazy sea change moment, we gave up our jobs and we purchased a cafe in Blackwood. We changed it into a cafe restaurant, and we ran it on sustainable, ethical lines using local produce, showcasing, you know, the local food and alcohol. We were crafting things from scratch. We were using the term circular economy before they even existed. And we were going along quite well. But while I was doing that, I decided to start a Shop Local campaign. And I went to we had 55 businesses on board, and I went to my council and I said, please, can you give us in principle support? Please, can you give me someone to engage with? We wanted to close roads and have markets and community dinners and things like that. So please, can I have one point of contact? And please, can we have $500 to help out? And the answer to all those questions was no. And so I got really cross and I thought, I'm going to run for mayor. So I did. And in that campaign, my tagline was together we can be better. And that meant, by including everyone, businesses and community and council, in everything we did, we were better than when we excluded business or excluded community. So there were 3 campaign platforms. The first one was environment and addressing climate change, and that's really important where I'm mayor in Mitcham. The economy, so stimulating local businesses and looking for alternative income streams for council. And then being a yes council, which meant having a default position of how can we help you to make this happen, rather than no, it's way too risky. So I won that election and I cried into my pillow and I thought, what have I done? And then I just had to get up and get on with the job. So part of my campaign was this idea that Mitcham could become the first solar powered city. And it took a while to get things into place, and we had to move a few staff around and employ a few new people, but eventually we went to tender to find a collaboration partner to provide solar and batteries to residents and businesses with a no upfront cost option. And what we did was all the homework to de-risk the program for residents and the council. And the program's been very popular in Mitcham, and we've had almost 1,000 of our 30,000 homes sign up. And residents have saved around about $3 million on their bills so far. And they're also making additional money from our virtual power plant. So more recently, Charles Sturt, Marion, Unley and Campbelltown have replicated this scheme, which for me is pretty gratifying. And I attended a Sutherland Hills meeting earlier this year to talk about this program, and I think that your Mayor and your CEO attended a community session at Marion last week to get a bit more information. And I'd be super happy to brief your council at any time, because I reckon this program could work for you and your residents. However, I digress. The next part of my story is what happened off the back of the solar program, and this is about our most recent electricity tender for city operations. So that's street lights and energy for our civic buildings, our council rooms, club rooms, libraries. And we went out to tender with Murray Bridge to see if we could get a better price for a smaller volume rather than using the usual LGA aggregated model. And the outcome of this process was, yes, we could. Murray Bridge is saving around $350,000 per year for the next 10 years, and they're using 100% wind power. And Mitcham is going to spend some money. We're going to spend $2 million, but we're using solar and a large amount of batteries, and we're looking to save $10 million over the next 10 years. And these numbers are without CPI increases or increases in the cost of power. Charles Sturt also went out and they've signed up to wind power, and they'll be saving about $700,000 per year, I think. So the idea of using renewables certainly has merit, but my question is how to ensure access for other councils. So we've onboarded, a degree of expertise to get to this position, but there's a ton of councils that can't do that. So I believe this is a classic example of where the LGA could play a role. The transition to renewables offers countless opportunities for not only for climate change, but for economic development. So the LGA is really well placed to take great ideas and help roll them out across the sector. And there's also a need to facilitate discussions between members with common concerns. And for example, I'll just say bushfires, behavioural standards, freight bypass, a few other things. My thought is that there are excellent solutions that are happening across the sector, but we don't have a way to share those, and we keep reinventing the wheel, and I think the LGA is the perfect facilitator and the perfect solution for that. So the same things that were important to me in the mayoral campaign are what motivated me to stand for the president of LGA, and that's environmental sustainability, financial sustainability, and saying yes. Saying yes, particularly to working together and to exploring new possibilities. So I think by facilitating conversations in areas of interest and being strategic with our research and development fund, we can do a lot. In my travels, I've gotten around to a few of the LGAs this year, and I've been trying to understand the differences.
Sorry, Heather, just to let you know, you've got 2 minutes left, and that includes question time.
Excellent, because I've got about 2 seconds worth of saying. What I found is that there are huge differences, but I think that together we can accommodate both points of view. I'll stop now. Thank you. Sorry to take so long. Questions?
No, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Does anybody have any questions for Mayor Holmes-Ross? No.
Not one single little question?
No, not one single little question.
Okay.
So look, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We will be in this agenda. We'll be voting for the next president. So I should be able to let you know what the council's decision has been tomorrow.
That would be absolutely terrific. I wish you well in your deliberations, and would just like to promise to do my very best, if elected, to serve you all. So thank you and have a great meeting.
Thank you. So that's Heather, and we don't, because she's not waiting around, we don't need to go to that agenda item until that comes up. But we have got another deputation, and that's Sharon Mayer. Is that pronounced right, Mayer? Sharon Mayer, who's going to be talking to the council about the Blue Tree project. Sharon, if you'd like to come and sit at the end there. David, perhaps you could show Sharon how to use the microphone. Yep, just take a seat there. So Sharon, you've got up to 10 minutes, and that includes questions from the elected members.
Thank you. I'm not good at public speaking, so see how I go. Oh God.
Yeah.
I agree with the dog. Good evening, council members. My name's Sharon. Sorry.
That's all right. Would you like a drink of water, Sharon?
No. I'm here tonight to put forward a proposal to paint a tree blue as part of the Blue Tree project. The Blue Tree project is for mental health awareness and is a charity helping change the way we talk about mental health. Mental health affects 45% of the population at some time in their life, and rural and regional suicide rates is the highest, especially among men. Sorry, thank you. I first saw the blue trees on a holiday in WA where the project was first started, and it intrigued me. So I Googled it and found the trees along the way. There are currently 1,255 registered trees around Australia so far. I'd like permission to paint the tree just past Aldi, so you can see it on the way in. I'd like to supply the paint. I'll make the donation and I'll paint it in a safe way without endangering myself. Thank you for listening, and I hope as a community we can put Victor Harbour on the mental health awareness map. Sorry for the tears.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Can I just ask you, a lot of those trees have got plaques on them. Are you okay? Plaques and lifeline, the lifeline, the number. Does the Blue Tree project supply plaques or have plaques that you can copy?
I think they do. Otherwise, I think you can just get an "Are you okay" plaque and actually put it on there.
Yep. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Sharon? David?
Thanks, Sharon, for your presentation.
Sorry.
How much painting will you be doing? The whole tree or only part of the tree?
Only as far as that I can go. So for the trees that I've seen, some were painted all the way up, depending on how big they were, and some were only obviously as far as that they could.
So it won't be what we call a thumb, like a sore thumb. I saw it'll stand out and be imposing. I just want to try to think about how the view of it, how people will see it. It's only up to your height. It's not intrusive, is it?
No, it'll be as far as a pole. The trees, I got a photo if you like.
It's the tree on Tuck Reserve.
I've seen
Yeah.
it. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, thank you, Sharon. If you want to take a seat,
Yep.
Because you're here, we'll go straight to item 18.1, which is the motion on notice regarding your project. And I'd like to move that the council grants permission for Sharon Mayer and her family to paint the dead tree blue at Tuck Reserve, Adelaide Road, as part of the Blue Tree project, on the understanding that all safety measures are the responsibility of the participants, and council will not be liable for any incidents, injuries or damages that may arise during the project. I'll ask for a seconder before I speak to my motion. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speaking to my motion, rural communities often face unique challenges when it comes to mental health. Factors such as isolation, limited access to healthcare professionals and stigma surrounding mental health issues can prevent individuals from talking about mental health and seeking help if they need it. The vast distances between homes and facilities can also create barriers. According to many studies, people in rural areas may experience higher rates of depression, anxiety and suicide compared to their urban counterparts. Lack of resources can lead to feelings of hopelessness, exacerbating these issues. Therefore, it's vital, especially in rural areas, to create an environment where mental health can be openly discussed and support can be sought without fear of judgment. As a psychologist, I know that open conversations about mental health can significantly reduce stigma and encourage individuals to seek help. And normalising discussions around mental health problems can foster an atmosphere of compassion and understanding. When people feel safe sharing their struggles, it not only aids their healing process, but also helps others who may be experiencing similar challenges. The Blue Tree project was a grassroots movement created to promote awareness and conversations about mental health, particularly in rural communities. You drive past a blue tree and the question is, well, what's that? You stop and you look at it and it's got, are you okay? And it's got lifeline support on there. And you're starting to have a conversation about mental health. The project encourages individuals to paint trees blue as a symbol of hope and support, sparking dialogue about mental health in a creative and visible way. The Blue Tree project aims to remove the stigma associated with mental health struggles and encourage open discussions. When people see these vibrant blue trees, they are reminded of the importance of mental health and the need for community support. Looking at the Blue Tree project, often local events, workshops and storytelling sessions have emerged from the blue trees that have been painted in different communities and have increased exponentially the discussions around mental health. By participating in initiatives, especially initiatives that have come from community members, like the Blue Tree project, Victor Harbour can not only raise the awareness, but also actively support those struggling with mental health issues. These efforts promote connection and understanding and foster a community where people feel comfortable reaching out for help. By supporting initiatives around mental health and suicide prevention, such as the Blue Tree project, we as a council can help break the cycle of stigma and isolation. Together, we as a community can create a culture of understanding, compassion and support that encourages individuals to seek help and talk to others about their mental health struggles. Remember, it's okay to talk about mental health and it's essential to listen. The resilient, support and caring nature of our community can only be bolstered by embracing this Blue Tree project. Councillor Henderson, do you want to, as a seconder, do you want to speak to the motion?
I don't think there's anything I can add that you haven't said.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak? Thank you, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I very much support this initiative. I only had two concerns. One is the location of the tree. It may be on an area that council is still yet to decide what to do with that land, and the tree may end up being removed if it gets sold. That's, I'm worried, not so much about the tree, it's just the location. The other was in reading through this, it all makes sense, but I just wanted to understand what the impact may be on those people, families that have lost someone through mental health issue and suicide. If they see the tree, would that create any trauma or any issues for them? So it'd just be good to get some alternate perspective as well I totally understand and support what they're doing. I was
Mm.
just concerned that someone may be driving by that's lost someone and what impact that might have with them and the location. They
Sure.
might too.
So the location, yes, the tree may be bulldozed or it might fall down at some point in time. But I think while it's up, that conversation is happening. The second one about the blue tree triggering people, it may do if somebody has lost somebody. Certainly, I can recall there's a blue tree on Kangaroo Island. My stepfather committed suicide a couple of years ago, and I can remember driving past the blue tree for the first time with my husband, and it sort of reminded me that Len had taken his life, and it started that conversation. And it started that conversation that then moved into, well, you know, he was in the city. You know, what would have happened if he'd been in the country? And so I think those conversations get started. A number of people, when I've been to there's a suicide group in Victor that every year go down and sit on the memorial bench and talk and have an event in Kent Reserve. And one of the things that they often say is that people don't talk about it. And it's healthy to talk about. And I think that while it's a sad, you know, if they're talking about suicide rather than just mental health, it is extremely sad. But it needs to be talked about and it needs to not be a stigma. And if people are struggling, especially young men in a rural setting, which is the highest suicide rate, having other mates that they can talk about. And you know, perhaps going up and exploring the plaque, you know, and the plaque having "Are you okay?" and "Here's Lifeline" and "Here's Headspace" and "Here are the numbers that you can ring," may help somebody.
Is there an option? There's a men's group that deals with mental health and support. Is there an opportunity for that group to put their details on the tree as well?
There may be. That would be
Okay.
up to. You'd need to
Yeah.
talk to Sharon about
Because that would
that.
be useful. Yeah.
Are there any other questions, Councillor Kemp?
Yes, it is a very emotional subject, this, and I've had a few phone calls late this afternoon about people talking about the subject of being reminded of loved ones who took their own lives, and they don't want to have a symbolic tree which reminds them of that purpose. I understand, I support the blue tree concept. I think it's fantastic. I would prefer to see a permanent location where it won't be disturbed or destroyed. If we could find another tree which will be just as good, but you know, in a permanent position. Again, it's about another phone call I've received today is about people who live in that vicinity and who don't want to look out the window and see a blue tree. You know, in that sense, that's why I asked the question: how bold will it be in that context? If it's only going to be, you know, 6 foot high, I guess it's not going to be intrusive. So again, it's about the benefits, the upside and the downside of this, and it has an effect on all the community in different ways. So I'm just wondering whether is it the right location, because of it's an entry statement into the city, and it could create, as you say, good conversations in the right area, but also again, if it gets bowled over in a couple of years' time, for example, then people will say, what happened there, where did it go? And again, is council going to promote this through their website to engage the community, to actually get them to understand what the blue tree is about? Because unless you know and followed it, you don't know. And I think we'll get more questions from the community as to why it is, if we could actually look at that. So I'm just wondering, is it a possibility to look for another site which is more permanent and won't be touched, and of course it could be more available for people to go and sit next to and reflect in that respect. But on where it is at the moment, it's pretty hard for people to do that. I know they can park in the car park there by Audi, but yeah, certainly support it. But I'm just wondering if it's possible, if we adjourn this, to get another tree which is more permanent and can be set up for a better place.
This is this is coming off the deputation from Sharon and her family, and discussions with her about that specific tree in Tuck Reserve. It is in an industrial zone by Aldi and the ambulance station, and you know, the industries along there. It's not about suicide or reminding suicide. 1/4 of us have some form of mental health issue, and it's about increasing the discussion around mental health and Are You OK? Just as Are You OK Day once a year encourages people to ask each other, Are you OK? The Blue Tree as a initiative asks people, you know, what's the blue tree? Or what's that sign on it? Are you OK? And gets that conversation going. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sharon. You're free to paint your tree blue. And I'm sure Michael Simmons will want to speak to you about your blue tree. If we can go back to the beginning. We have no questions from the gallery and there are no petitions. So the next item is item 9, Office of the Chief Executive and its outstanding resolutions. The recommendation being that Council receive and note the outstanding resolutions report. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconded by, thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that?
They were all fine. I read through the progress reports were good.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Henderson? No. Does anybody have any questions about the outstanding resolutions? If not, sorry? Did anyone notice? I did. Did anyone notice the difference in how they presented? Someone's being cheeky next to me. They read a lot better. There's the outstanding resolution. So it's now the completed action list and those that are still on the action list. And they're also identified by the meeting date rather than the actual number, which is a lot easier. So thank you very much to administration for doing that. Anything else you want to say?
No, it was all new system.
It's the efficiencies of the new system. So all those in favour of receiving them? Those against? That's carried, thank you. 9.2 is the Safe Environment Policy Review, and the recommendation is that Council adopt the Safe Environment Policy as provided in Attachment 1, which I'll take as read. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, Councillor Schiller? No. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Burns.
Thank you. Read the policy, was fine with the policy. Just had a question. Why add clause 6.2 where it was already covered under 7.1 on page 39? So 6.2 is on page 37. Because it actually, it's basically duplicating, says, you know, council members. Yeah. So I just wondered why. I could understand if council members weren't included with all the other employees, but because they are, it's sort of duplicating.
Do you want to respond to that?
Oh, sorry, it's also changing it from, it was in there before, under elected members. Members are referred to as council members in the legislation now, so we're updating it accordingly, but it's also a difference between roles and responsibilities. So a lot of you'll see policies now are updated where it says elected member to council member, so it's really just terminology.
Any other questions or comments? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Another review, this one of the asset management policy. These next few reviews have already gone through the audit committee who have supported them. The recommendation being that council adopt the reviewed asset management policy. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Kemp, thank you, and Councillor Schiller to second. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. Thank you. The asset accounting policy, again, this was supported at the audit committee, and the recommendation is that council support the reviewed asset accounting policy as provided at attachment 1. Someone like to move that way? Please. Thank you, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Schiller. Again, either of you want to speak to it? No. Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I had concerns about clause 6.2, the annual depreciation being removed on assets and the useful life of assets extended quite substantially. And I was just a bit concerned about that. I thought they were good measures to have in, and I know that they may be covered in other policies, but I just felt that that was quite important for the asset accounting policy, that's all. So trying to understand why they were removed. It's on page 76.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So the actual headings are just about realigning with the terminology used in the One Council software. So it's not actually trying to make a material change within the policy, but to make sure that the terminology is consistent.
But it's actually got a removal of all the various line items and the ages of the usable life range actually extended by 10 to 20 years on page 76. So it's not about headings, it's about content.
It's through the Mayor, it's a broader bracket, and that was discussed at the Audit and Risk Committee, and most of that is captured within the asset management plans. So it's ensuring that there is an actual asset life, and it's a broader range. There's also some changes in terms of some of the way in which the new system is actually, some of our assets are based on the units and kilometres. So there's some changes that will come as the new system is implemented. So this policy will probably undertake some further changes with the new system as well.
Okay, and is that still aligning with accounting standards? I know
Yes.
it might align to the computer system.
It has to align with accounting standards.
Okay, and there's no financial provisioning implications at some point in the future where you haven't provisioned enough because...
Well, that's what the asset management plans will do, ensuring that they feed into the long-term financial plan so that there is appropriate depreciation and provisions for them.
Yeah.
So your current review of the asset management plans that you're currently undertaking will identify those replacement costs and the provisions of those.
Okay, because my concern is that if you push out the replacement period, then the costs get deferred and it could become more of an issue down the road.
Correct.
For future councils, that's all.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion in relation to item 9.4? No. In that case, then I'll put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.5, the reviewed internal control policy, again supported at the audit committee. The recommendation is that council adopt the reviewed internal control and audit policy as provided at attachment 2. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Do either of you want to speak to it? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I obviously have a preference that the internal audits are ideally co-sourced with both internal and external people doing a review. The internal controls and so forth are fine with administration. Normally you have 4 layers of governance and risk, the first being the administration staff themselves doing their tests and check. The second is that you have internal audits being done, ideally by someone independent and external, or at least doing it together. The third is the Audit and Risk Committee having oversight, and the fourth is your external auditors with their annual review. I think in combining or diluting some of those controls can increase risk, and I just think that I would feel much more comfortable if the internal audits The internal checks are fine with administration. Internal audits were really co-sourced rather than done internally. That's my only concern. The rest of it was fine.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Yes, as a member of the Audit Committee, when this was discussed, it was pointed out that the Internal Control Officer reports straight to the Audit Committee, and it is sort of sits independent of administration. So I believe the person in that role at the moment is quite strict in what she or he will be doing in the way of internal controls compared to what's happening within council. So I see this person, and I think the committee was quite happy about that. The person is quite independent, and even though an employee, it might sound strange, but it does happen. So I think it's good.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I think you're quite right in terms of the independence of the internal audit committee person. The audit committee was actually quite, the internal control person rather, and the audit committee was quite happy with that. Is there any further discussion amongst the members? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to Citizen of the Year Awards, and the first recommendation is that Council call for nominations for our 2025 Citizen of the Year Awards, commencing on October the 1st and concluding on the 15th of November. There are 4 categories: Citizen of the Year, Young Citizen of the Year, Community Event of the Year, and Active Citizen of the Year. Would someone like to move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding, I think Councillor Kemp, you had your hand up. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. That Council establish a 2025 Citizen of the Year Awards selection panel consisting of 2 council members and up to 3 community representatives to assess the nominations that are received. And what I'll do is I'll ask for a couple of people who want to nominate to volunteer to be on that panel. If we have more than 2, then we will go to the Chief Executive Officer as a returning officer. I'd like to be on the panel this year. I haven't been the last couple of years, so I'll put my hand up for that. And Councillor McKenzie, thank you. Anybody else? So we'd move then to recommendation 4, that Council appoints all right, 2 and 4 together. 2 I'll take as read, and 4 that Council appoints Councillor McKenzie and Mayor Jenkins to the 2025 Citizen of the Year Awards selection panel. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, Councillor Schiller. Does anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. The 5th recommendation is that Council call for expressions of interest in order to fill the 3 community positions and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to appoint the community members for the selection panel. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, Councillor Burns. Either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. (9.7) is the Local Government Finance Authority election of representative members of the Board of Trustees. We've got to vote for 2 people for that board. So I would like to actually move, rather than us discussing who we're going to vote for and why, I'd actually like to move that Council appoint the Chief Executive Officer as returning officer for the purposes of a secret ballot to determine the council member representatives for the Local Government Finance Authority election of representative members to the Board of Trustees. I think that would be an easier way to do it. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns. And seconding that, please. Councillor Quinton, did you have your hand up? Sorry? No, you didn't have, but you're happy to second it? Councillor Burns and Councillor Quinton, all those in favour? That's carried, thank you. I'll now hand over to Victoria. Katie, thank you.
Thank you. Katie's going to provide you with a piece of paper. We're looking for your preferred 2 candidates. So the candidates for the 2 vacancies are Councillor Michael Philip Ryder, Councillor Jonathan, can't say their name, Pitzer, Councillor Grant Piggott, Michael Sedgman, CEO of Adelaide, and John Smedley. So if you can just mark your 2 preferred candidates on your ballot paper, and then Katie will pick them up for me. You're looking for the names are up on the screen too. The details of their applications are in your agenda.
How many?
The 2 candidates with the most votes, with 4 votes in total, were Michael Philip Ryder and Michael Sedgman. That's the 2 preferred candidates.
So the recommendation is that council resolve to vote for Mr Ryder and Mr Segman to be the representative board members for the Local Government Finance Authority of South Australia, and authorise myself to complete the ballot paper in that manner. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconded by Councillor Burns. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. We now come to the Local Government Association President elections. We heard from Heather Holmes-Ross today, and you would have got several videos that were passed on to you, and also letters from the other candidates that are standing as well. We just need 1 candidate for that. And once again, I would ask someone to Move that the council appoints the Chief Executive Officer as the returning officer for the purpose of a secret ballot to determine the council member representatives for the Local Government Association President election. Moving that way, Councillor Burns, seconding that, Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Once again, actually, no, Chelsea is going to give you a ballot paper. And so you are your preferred candidate, one preferred candidate for the selection for the president position. So Mayor Jane Lomax-Smith, Mayor Michael Coxon, Mayor Chris Hanna, Mayor Heather Holmes-Ross and Mayor Claire Bowen. If you could please write down your preferred candidate and then Chelsea will collect them up.
This is a hard one.
Only just. Everybody wanted somebody. With 3 votes, Heather Holmes-Ross is the candidate with the most votes.
Would somebody like to resolve to vote for Heather Holmes-Ross, or to move rather to vote for Heather Holmes-Ross and authorise myself to complete the ballot paper for the election of the Local Government Association President? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now come to 10.1, community grant application. And the recommendation is that council grant $2,494.60. Sure, it's 60, not 61. Kelly would have conniptions if she was here. It's true. To fund the Flurio Run Tribe to support the purchase of a branded marquee and feather banners to help with promotion and weather protection at local events. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Burns, and seconding Councillor Henderson. Either of you want to speak to that?
Yes, if I could. I'm supporting this. The amount is higher than a lot of other community grant applications. However, I believe this group adds value to the community. They help promote Victor Harbour events and they haven't requested any funding previously. So all that swayed me over.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson? No. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question to the panel. Did the panel consider advising this group to go to the sports grants as to why they didn't apply for the sports grants? Because it is a sporting issue.
Don't know who's on the panel. Were you on the panel, Graham? No. Marilyn, were you on the panel? Oh, you were, Councillor Quinton? Microphone, Mick.
Councillor Kemp and I are on the panel for the sporting community grants, and it hasn't come through as a request through that mechanism.
Okay. Councillor Schiller.
I'm on the community grants panel alongside Marilyn Henderson, and we've voted because this particular organisation is not just a sporting organisation, it's a recreational type organisation. They have no membership fees coming in, and the marquee is going to be used at many events throughout Victor Harbor, and we'll be promoting Victor Harbor, City of Victor Harbor on the side of the marquee. And so on those grounds, we've let it go through.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions? Councillor Henderson, did you want to speak? Oh, no, you didn't. Did you want to speak to this?
Just to add what Angela just said, it is a community group rather than a sporting group, so it came to the community panel for assessment.
Thank you. In that case, I'll put it to the floor. Did you, sorry, Councillor Burns, did you want to close the debate? No. I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 10.2.
Point of order,
Yes.
if I may. I was just wanting to move that this item gets adjourned to our January meeting. My concern is that unlike the Victor Harbor Oval group, there's a new group here, and council are getting various requests from different groups in Encounter Bay, and they sort of seem to be all disjointed. And I think this would give an opportunity for the new committee to align all the groups and for council to actually get proper proposals, because we're getting proposals and then other groups are changing their mind, and that's changing funding requests. It doesn't mean that all these things aren't important. It's the timing of it. We need to make sure that the money invested is being spent and there's an agreement by all the different groups. So not that we don't do it, I just think we need to allow the different groups to better coordinate, and for that new committee that's just been set up to actually allow them time, and that also gives administration time to cost the submissions coming in. Otherwise, we're going to have it all piecemeal.
I think this, before you put in your adjournment motion, this is looking at that money, because you're right, some of the Encounter Bay Bowling Club and the Netball Club chop and change, but the car park for the football grounds has been needed for quite a long time and is not going to be changing. So this motion looks to put that money to actually get that car park finished, which will be that area finished, which is quite needed and won't change. Can you add anything to that, Victoria?
Sorry, just noting you're looking to defer it to January. It's not an adjourned debate because there's no debate on the floor. So just to be clear on that, so that's not a formal motion. But yes, the football grounds, in terms of once they constructed their new facilities, which is not going to change under any of their master planning, they have already expressed issues in terms of drainage and flooding and also disabled access. It's a gravel car park and they currently have some fake grass to try and make it a bit more accessible. This is a reallocation of funds to the precinct. They were going to be invested in the precinct anyway. Staff have had discussions with the Encounter Bay Bowls Club. They are looking at some of their own facilities in terms of designs and not quite ready to formalise their car park and have asked for a deferment. And this was going, well, we know there's issues with the football car park. It won't change in terms of any master planning. It's more around maybe netball club, hockey facilities, access in and out. that car park over by the clubs is not going to change under any master planning, really.
Happy now with that. I was just concerned that if you invest and then all of a sudden they change their mind in 3 months, it's just mucking around the other clubs, administration, council and the community. That's all.
I can understand
Agree.
that.
Sorry, Mayor, if I may just add one more component to that. Noting that obviously these funds will be used to do that design and hopefully construct within that amount. If the construct cost is more than that amount, it will be coming back to the chamber.
So do you want to move that motion, councillor Burns? No? No, this is the motion that's on the table. Okay. Would someone like to move the motion? Thank you, councillor Henderson, and seconded by councillor Schiller. Do you want to speak to that, councillor Henderson? Councillor Schiller?
Having visited the Encounter Bay Football Club rooms recently and experiencing trying to alight and depart, disability parking is needed in that area. They've had the upgrade of their facilities, and for our whole community to be able to use that, I think it's a good initiative.
Thank you, councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Yes, due process. I think this was such a big issue for the Encounter Bay Football Club. Why wasn't it in part of our budget deliberations? It wasn't presented to us for it, for a discussion. And I believe that, from my memory, the Encounter Bay Bowls Club car park was deferred for another year and it wasn't put in as a consensus from the floor. That's my understanding. So I'm a bit perplexed as to why it's done this way. So again, we haven't budgeted for it, the extension, because as the CEO has said, that if the costs do blow out, we'll have to find more money out of our capital budget, which has not been budgeted for. And I just think that, we just got to be mindful of sticking to due process, because it doesn't send a good image to the community if we keep adding to the budget after we approved it, after we've done the public consultation. So I think we should stick, within realities. If people don't put in for a bid, then, they have to wait till the following year. So I won't be supporting it, even though I understand the argument why they need it.
My understanding is that this is the approval, this is the reallocation. So it's not increasing the budget, but it's a reallocation of the 158,000 project from the Encounter Bay Bowling Club car park to the football car park. Is there any further discussion? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Urban Growth Management Strategy discussion paper, the engagement results and first draft for public consultation. It's 10.3. I'll do this recommendation on block if you're happy for that. If someone would like to move those 3 recommendations on block. Thank you, councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Quinton. Do you want to speak to that, councillor Henderson? No, councillor Quinton? Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had one question, one concern. The community feedback's been incorporated, which is terrific, but I couldn't locate the council feedback from elected members where we had a lot of this discussed. There were some items that were raised. For example, Councillor Kemp talked about sewerage and power and so forth. So there's part of it's mentioned in the infrastructure, but not everything that we discussed. My only concern was, again, it's unfortunate that only 107 people responded to this. I would have thought, given the importance of this, you would have had more people, but it was I think encouraging that the people who did respond, the majority were between 55 and 74. Obviously, they've got time to do surveys, but yeah, out of like 16,000 residents, I still struggled to see the number of people that respond to council surveys. I just, this is the future of the city here we're talking about. That's all.
Thank you. Graham, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, through the Mayor, just in relation to the feedback that was provided by members via the workshop, there were a handful of comments and changes. I haven't got those at hand in terms of what they were, and my understanding is that they are in the new document, so I'm not sure if you've had a chance to have a look at the new document. The only one I can remember off the top of my head, you mentioned one about infrastructure from Councillor Kemp. The one I do remember off the top of my head is the blue water economy comments that you mentioned. They're definitely in there as well.
It was more the, it talks about infrastructure, but only just touches on roads and so forth. And we did talk about sewerage and water and power as well. That needs to be planned for.
Objective 3.3 under the services and infrastructure to meet demands are reliable and efficient. It covers off on water supply, wastewater, transport networks, stormwater, open space, telecoms, electricity, the whole box and dice there. Wastewater is sewage. Yep.
Is there any further discussion? In that case, I'll put those recommendations on block to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Corporate and customer service, the customer service statistics, and it was great reading those. And I'd like to say thank you very much to Vicky Hutchinson and her team and your team, Karen, for doing a great job putting them all together. So if you can pass that on. The recommendation is that Council receive and note the customer service statistics for January to June 2024. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Seconding Councillor Kemp. Either of you want to speak to them? No, Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, I think it's a great success story because the ladies behind the front counter do a magnificent job. They do put up with the community in various behaviour patterns because of their personal issues, but I believe a lot of things are resolved through discussions at the counter by the staff, and I think they do a great job.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Burns.
I would like to see if we could obtain the social media analytics. I'd just like to understand the breakdown of the demographics and who's responding and who's not. That's all. But just out of interest, where you've had social media responses, there's analytics you capture as part of that. I'd be interested to see that.
I'm sure that that we can provide that or get that provided to us through the elected member update. And if there's any specific analytics you want, perhaps just let Karen know. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Victor Harbour Ring Road Freight Route 12.1. The recommendation is that Council endorse the heavy vehicle gazettal notice for the Victor Harbour Ring Road route. Comprises, did this purposely. No. Comprising of Welsh Road and Armstrong Road between Victor Harbour Road and Inman Valley Road for 26 metre B double use, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to take necessary steps to complete the process. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, and seconded Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Mackenzie? Councillor Henderson? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. This was touched on at a previous briefing session, and I understand the need and requirement and also supportive of it. I was just interested in who the potential users would be of those heavy vehicles, because I would have thought it's more developers than it is freight trucks for businesses, and about future costs. Obviously, if you increase the grade of trucks that use the road, obviously there may be cost implications on that road in the future, and I'm just wondering what impact that might have.
I think they already use the road, and you're looking at, I think, stock transport
as well.
would be some of those heavy trucks. It's a matter of gazetting it so that it's actually there, because they already use that route.
I'm just looking at something like Whalers Road, for example. The number of heavy trucks that are going up and down, and the toll it's taking on the road surface. And I understand, you know, why they go that way, because of the alternatives aren't really viable. But I'm just concerned about this road, and if there's very little implications, that's fine.
Very little implications. That's
Okay.
Welsh Road and Armstrong Road. It's the ring road, basically. Yep. Any further discussion? Councillor Henderson?
I didn't speak originally, but just to add information for Councillor Burns, a lot of logging trucks use that road.
I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now go to 12.2, signalised pedestrian crossing Adelaide Road, and Councillor Schiller, I believe you'd like to move that with an extra point. Do you want me to read out point 4?
Yes, I've sent through a adjustment to the motion that's got and section 4, which basically is asking administration to seek savings in the operating budget, but also to seek grant funding if possible in any areas where it may be available.
Thank you. So you're moving it on block, and Councillor Schiller, which includes your point 4? Yes. And do I have a seconder for that on block that includes Councillor Schiller's point 4?
Question about that additional item. Is that dependent that this won't go ahead unless we find savings and get grant funding?
The item says that administration look to identify savings within the current operating budget where possible and apply for any relevant grant opportunities that may assist in offsetting this project.
Okay, but that's after, not before.
It's not contingent on that occurring. It's encouraging administration to seek grant funding and obviously reviewing our operating budget to find savings. So no, it's not contingent on those two items. It's just sitting there as advice to administration.
Thank you.
So moving Councillor Schiller, seconding,
Sorry,
sorry,
I want to discuss them separately, please.
you want to discuss them separately? You want to discuss them separately too? All right, so we can go down to point 4, Councillor Schiller, when we get to that. Would someone like to recommend the first recommendation? Oh, sorry, would someone like to move the first recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schiller, that Council endorse to proceed with the activation of the pedestrian refuge located north of the new ambulance station site on Adelaide Road to a signalised crossing. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Schiller?
I've been a great advocate of trying to get signalised pedestrian crossings wherever I can, and this is an area which I put a motion up, I think it was late last year, seeking DIT to authorise a signalised pedestrian crossing to be located in that general region. Ideally, closer to some of the other amenities would be good, but this is a case of the opportunity is there to do this while the ambulance station is being built, and it will provide safety for people when the ambulances are coming through. And it's not just for people like myself with disabilities that are going to be finding it more and more difficult to cross that road in the next 10 years if we don't start to look at more traffic intersections within the township. That the township will be divided for pedestrians, basically. It won't be an option for many people to cross the roads, and we have a number of businesses on both sides of the road now, and we have 2 residential care facilities quite close to that area. We have a school on the other side of the road, the Lutheran school. So we've got to take the opportunity while it's there. We can't just wait around till it is convenient in this particular circumstance.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Quinton?
100% agree with Angela's comments. My only issue would be, I'd say I'd prefer it if we did a single crossing for it to be south of the ambulance station, just because that's where the main retail centres are, and also a majority of the housing. So that's obviously I work in that area as well. So I do see that most people are always trying to cross over to Coles and Bunnings rather than north of the ambulance station. So I don't know if there's scope maybe to do two, but I would have thought it would be more usable to have a crossing south of the ambulance station.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Councillor Kemp.
I'm not supporting this at the moment because I think that we need to be looking at this a bit more detail, and I thank Councillor Quinton for raising another important point that we need to take into consideration. So I think, really that's why I'm not supporting it. I think we need to have a conversation through with the ambulance service as to whether we can incorporate crossing south of their station, incorporated into their traffic light systems. Can be done. So I'm just wondering whether it's not necessary, we have to do it immediately. We have a safe refuge in place for people to cross in a safe manner. But so another a couple of months won't make much difference. But again, it's about, I think, increasing of budgets and that. But I'm just wondering whether the timelines allow for a bit more conversation and exploration of a signalised crossing, whether it can be incorporated.
Yep, Victoria.
Through the Mayor, if I may just comment on that. So we have had discussions with the ambulance stations of council. So part 2 of this motion is that we actually allocate $90,000 to enable the provision of the conduit, because the ambulance station lights are going in very soon, and so we wanted to incorporate the conduit if we did choose, or that maybe chose to put in the crossing there, because it needs to actually coordinate with the existing lights of the ambulance station. We can't have them sort of competing. So they are aware of that. So part 2 of this would be to enable the conduit to go in, or possibly an installation at a later date. And obviously then part 3 was obviously the installation, noting that they are operating costs because it's not our road. So those conversations have already occurred. It can occur, but it must also be signalised in with the traffic, with the lights of the ambulance station, which are imminent. They are about to do some road closures to enable that infrastructure go in.
Just to clarify the question, did you have to, the administration have conversation with the ambulance station design to include a pedestrian crossing south of the station in using their current light system by adding the pedestrian lights in part of their system?
Yep, so if you look on page 223 of the report, we've had conversations. DIT has provided comment that the existing location of the pedestrian refuge crossing can coexist with the installation of the ambulance traffic lights. They also advised if signalised pedestrian crossing lights are to be installed, they need to be linked to the ambulance station traffic lights to ensure the management of interaction of both signals are synchronised.
Right, I'll try and explain it so you understand. You're not getting what I'm saying. You've got a set of lights which allow the ambulance to stop the traffic south and north so the ambulance can leave the station. I'm just saying, can a pedestrian crossing system be built into those light systems to allow pedestrians to use that when the ambulance is not using it?
No. Otherwise, my understanding, we would have had it incorporated. They need to stand alone, but they need to be incorporated into the signalisation.
No, I understand that, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about location of where it is. So I'm just wondering whether
their lights are actually between the road that goes into, I think it's a retirement village that's directly opposite. There's a road, if you're looking on those maps. Their lights are actually going to be either side of that intersection.
Sorry, I still like the idea of a signalised lights. We've got to put them in south of the station, not north. So I'm just wondering, I'll just stick to my original, not to do it, because it may cost a little bit extra later on to put the conduit in. But I'm just wondering, at least they can make a pit ready for a conduit to be put in there, so we can get something done. But okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Burns.
I'm just struggling with increasing our operating budget. I totally get where everyone's coming from. I have concerns that it's a state-owned road and they're not prepared to contribute to this or fund it. And but at the same time, we're talking about 90,000 and then 250,000 of the operating budget, which I mean, if we can offset something out of the operational budget to that amount, then I'm happy to support it, but not extra. I mean, we really, we took as a chamber a view that we wouldn't be looking at increasing the operational capital budget for the remainder of the financial year. And every meeting we keep getting items coming up saying, add to it, add to it. And I just think we need to either offset something that we've already provisioned for or get grant funding ahead of time, then look at doing it, but not increasing the operation budget or capital budget.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor McKenzie.
Just a question. One of the crossings over there, didn't it already have conduit in it for a provision? Was this crossing or is this an additional crossing?
Through the mayor, yes, it was this crossing. So where it's identified in the plan in the report, where the red box is existing pedestrian refuge that has conduits underneath it for a future pedestrian activated crossing there. And that was done, if I can just add to that, a number of years ago, following some traffic engineer assessment of that whole stretch of road associated with new development that was anticipated there, bookended by Bunnings at one end and Aldi at the other, and essentially taking into consideration the other uses, the aged care facility uses around it and the schools as well. And it was determined that that would be an appropriate point for a standalone pedestrian activated crossing. That doesn't mean that at another point in time, some of the intersections might need some traffic lights that would also incorporate a pedestrian crossing, but that was the intent for why the conduit went there.
So just with, I guess, the conduit, looking at this new set of lights by the ambulance station, this is in additional to what this crossing has. It's essentially just to hook it up to the whole of the same system so they'll speak together.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Any further discussion? Or question, Councillor Quinton?
Is there scope to adjourn this item, or is it this is a time sensitive?
You can put an adjournment motion in if you'd like to. I'd like to speak to this item if possible before an adjournment motion, if that's possible. If I need to do a casting vote, I would be voting for this item. I think that this is an occupational health and safety issue. I agree with Councillor Kemp in terms of increasing our budget, but the traffic has become much more increased on that road. We're going to have an ambulance station on that road. We've got, it's an industrial area. There's Bunnings, there's Aldi, there's, a whole lot of other things, Waller's, more things going in, every week, more petrol stations you can poke a stick at. And I was at the Lutheran homes talking to the residents there a couple of weeks ago, and one of the main things that they were talking about was their fear of crossing the road. And one of them talked about a near miss. Somebody came around, I don't know what corner it was, didn't see them, and getting stuck as well in the middle of the road. Even though there's a refuge there, they felt very fearful with cars going back and forth and being stuck in the refuge. We've also got the school and lots of cars coming and going from the school, which includes a preschool. So I actually will support this because I think that although it's increasing the operating budget, I think that it's an occupational health and safety issue that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. If we leave it for later, it's going to be even more expensive because we'll have to do more works, and we don't want anyone to be hurt in the meantime. So that's where I lie if it is a hung vote. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose my concern is if it was so important, we should have provisioned it in the budget early this year. We knew that
I'm
It's
not
gonna-
looking backwards, I'm looking forwards. This has
Okay.
come up now.
Yeah, right.
Councillor Quinton, you were foreshadowing a motion.
No, I don't really want to adjourn it. I just, logically, I feel like, yeah, if we were going to put a pedestrian crossing in, it should be south of the ambulance station, because if you're going to get ambulances wanting to get somewhere quickly, they're going to be going north to Flinders. So I just feel like it would be a better location south of it, but I'd rather have something than nothing. So I'm happy to push forward with this.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller, you've spoken. Have you got a question?
I just wondering whether we've got any infrastructure people in the room.
Jodie's not here. No.
Because there is a complication when you look at the two sites that we have, the northern site and the southern site. The road is much wider, close to Coles, and I've walked all around that area, looking at possible places to put a pedestrian crossing. The closer you get down towards Coles, it gets very difficult to find a great place to put a pedestrian crossing.
Thank you. A question, Councillor Mackenzie?
Yes, sorry, one more question. If we did look at the crossing south of the ambulance station, would that be a higher cost because we'd have to make that island in the middle of the road and run conduit across the road where the existing crossing already has that?
Right.
Sorry, I'm not an engineer or an infrastructure person, but I would say yes, that would be my fairly educated guess.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate?
Oh, I can close the debate, but I haven't spoken, so I was going to
I
add
thought you-
something.
Didn't you move?
I moved it,
Oh,
but I
and you
didn't
didn't want to
speak.
speak. Okay.
I was under the impression from discussions we had much earlier on the proposed crossing that if it were to be further south, there were more complications with traffic congestion as you approach the roundabout. And that's why the northern site was chosen.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll close the debate.
Thank you. I now put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The second recommendation is that council endorse an increase in the 2024 operating budget of $90,000 for the conduit to be connected to the ambulance station lights with the signalised pedestrian crossing lights and detailed design to be undertaken. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson? And seconding that, Councillor Schiller? Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller, do you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The third recommendation that council endorse an increase in the 2024-25 operating budget of $250,000 for the construction of the signalised pedestrian crossing. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller?
I'll just state that this is a lot of money that we haven't prepared for our budgets, but this is about opportunity. And at the moment, we have an opportunity to link in with the ambulance station. We have them on side and we have DIT on side. If we delay this, then we may lose that opportunity. So sometimes we have to do things in council, pivot on the spot. And so this is a point where we've just got to pivot on the spot to make it happen.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Henderson? No. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Burns?
It was just a gentle reminder to all the elected members in the chamber. If anyone believes they have a conflict of interest, they probably should declare it.
Okay, you've made me think, oh, have I got a conflict of interest? I don't think so. I don't live in that area or work in that area. So councillor, I think we've talked around. I'll put this to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. That and councillor Schiller, number 4, that do you want to move, councillor Schiller, that administration look to identify savings within the current operating budget where possible and apply for any relevant grant opportunities that may assist in offsetting the project? You happy to move that way? Thank you. And seconding that, councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to it? You spoke to it earlier on, really, didn't you? Does anybody have any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. That's a good debate. We now move to 13.1, the Recreation Centre Management Committee meeting minutes, and the recommendations that council receive and note those minutes. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Burns, seconding that. Please, councillor Kemp. Do either of you have any questions? I'll put that to the. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Southern Community Transport Scheme Advisory Committee minutes. Recommendation that council receive and note the minutes. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, please. Councillor Burns. Do either of you have any questions about those minutes? Does anyone have any questions about the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes and summary, 26th of August. The recommendation I'll do on block that council receive and note the minutes, and that council receive and note the Audit and Risk Committee meeting summary. As you know, the chair of the Audit Committee now writes a summary at the end of each Audit Committee meeting. Would someone like to move those two recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, and seconded by Councillor Schiller. Have either of you got any questions in relation to the recommendations? No. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Burns?
Only about the reporting of the processing error within one council. There wasn't really a lot of information about that, and I'm concerned about what was written there. So.
Through the Mayor, obviously those discussions were held in depth, and the full report is in the Audit and Committee agenda. But obviously a number of them is changeover with the new corporate system and policies and procedures that need to change between Synergysoft and One Council, and keeping up to speed in terms of those policies and procedures changing.
And that, but I was assured that all that had been aligned, and there was no.
It's still ongoing. It's not aligned, and the auditors and the Audit Committee are aware that it is going to be ongoing until we are in one system. We are currently working within two systems, so we have some procedures that are relevant to Synergysoft and some that are relevant to One Council, and the auditing process occurred during the transition between the two, but it won't be fully complete until the new system is implemented in June 2025.
Is there any further discussion? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. There are no subsidiary and representative reports. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? No, then we move, and we've done the motion on notice regarding the Blue Tree project. So we move on to 18.2, which is another motion on notice by myself, which I don't usually put in motions on notice myself, but this is quite an important one. I don't know whether or not any of you came into the webinar that the Local Government Association had in relation to the financial assistance grants. The financial assistance grants have been talked about for a long, long time, ever since I've been on council. And the way that they are calculated is very, disadvantages some councils and advantages other councils. So my motion is that council, and I'll do the alternative motion, which I think is one word differently than my original one. Council requests via the South Australian Regional Organisation of Councils, that's SAROC, of which I sit on, that the Local Government Association of South Australia, in conjunction with the Federal Local Government Minister, State Local Government Minister and the Local Government Grants Commission of South Australia, instigate a review of the methodology used to distribute financial assistance grants, that considers an increase to the overall funding pool provided through the grant scheme, the percentage share divided amongst states and territories with a view to seeing a more equitable share provided to South Australia, alternate models that enabled a needs-based approach to funding allocation, and ways to deliver greater funding equity to South Australian councils. So financial assistance grants are provided to local governments throughout Australia by the Commonwealth Government, and they're provided through the Grants Commission in each state. And there's a way that they work out how much each council is going to get, a methodology used. First of all, South Australia gets the least, one of the least amounts of financial assistance grants through the whole state. So it's not equitably given to the states as a whole. Then when it comes to South Australia, the percentage, the models that are used disadvantage some councils. The grants are based on population. Population is calculated at the census time, and councils like Victor Harbor, for example, when the census is undertaken in August, we have a number of our population away. We also have 40% of our ratepayers are non-residential ratepayers, so they're not counted as living in Victor Harbor. So we get significantly less financial assistance grants, which are grants that are not tied. They're grants for us to use. For example, I think the Jagger Road grant came from a financial assistance grant. They're usually roads, bridges, those sorts of things, of which regional councils have a lot of. And yet we get less because of the way that they're calculated. This has gone on for a long time, and there's been lots of noises about, oh, it needs to be fairer. I would like to be able to take this motion on notice, and similar motions are coming from other councils, to the LGA and say to the LGA, this is something that you really need to advocate for on behalf of not just regional councils, but particularly regional councils, but on a needs-based basis for all councils, so that it's a much fairer system. So I'd really like that to be
I'm
carried.
happy to support that.
Thank you. You second that, Councillor Burns. Thank you very much. Does anybody want to speak to this or have any questions? No? In that case, then I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Henderson, you have a motion on notice 18.3 in relation to an art trail proposal. Would you like to propose your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There is an alternative motion there proposed by administration, and I am actually happy to go with that recommendation, which is that the City of Victor Harbor create an updated public art brochure while uploading the details of public art installations on the existing Victor Harbor Feel It Calling app and relevant council-owned websites. I started thinking about this when we recently funded some art projects, one of which was the mural on the primary school to celebrate their 150-year anniversary. And I got to thinking about all of the public art we have created in just the few years that I've been on council and sat on the Arts and Culture Advisory Group. And particularly thinking about the primary school art that's happening now, I thought, well, that's in a location where not everyone will see it, but probably everyone, and visitors included, need to know about its being there. And also the mosaic on the Bay Road Bridge is not always seen by all of our visitors. It depends which road they're driving down. So I thought we should create an art trail because I think we've got a significant wealth of public art now to do this. I hadn't realised that we had in the past a public art brochure, but that is no longer in print in any case. So that's why I put up this motion, so that not only our community knows about all of our art, but also our visitors. When they come here on holidays, the first thing I do when I go on holiday is pick up brochures and have a look at what walking trails are available, heritage and environmental tours, boat trips, music venues, art galleries and public art. So I think most people do that. And of course, a lot of people use apps instead. So to have both of those available, I think is the way to go.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burns? Yep. Do you want to speak to it?
Just quickly, I support it. A similar concept was talked about with the Heritage Committee of Council, looking at a history and heritage trail walk around Victor as well, linking into an app. So it would be good at some point whether that was possible to incorporate as well. There are photos around Victor which people enjoy of historical Victor. Be good to have an art trail and a history and heritage walking
Fantastic.
trail as well.
Because you're on the Heritage Committee?
Yeah.
Yep.
It had been discussed. I just hadn't submitted anything because I worried about the cost, that's all.
Yep. Thank you. And Councillor Henderson?
Just on that, can I ask administration? I think that brochure does exist, the Heritage Trail. Yeah.
Any further discussion? No, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Karemba had a motion on notice regarding gymnastics at the precinct. However, I understand that after speaking to you, Councillor Burns, he wants to defer that to the next meeting.
Sorry, just one question on that. In reading through the commentary, I just wanted to check, is the operator still confidential?
Yes.
Because it's listed in the public document on page 269. I was just worried about that. Even though the motion will be moved, it's actually listed. Obviously, it's inadvertently, but
Okay, thank you
Yep.
for bringing that to our attention. We now move to confidential items. And the first recommendation is that council go into confidence because the item is discussing information, the disclosure of which would involve the unreasonable disclosure of information concerning the personal affairs of somebody. Someone like to move that way, please? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, please. Thank you, Councillor Quinton. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. We'll wait for